Welcome to the May 16th program, and we've got a good one. We're going to be talking about Trump's historic trip to China. We're going to be talking about historic redistricting in America. We'll also spend a little bit of time talking about the Straits of Hormuz, Cuba, and who is running the deep state. Today's episode is brought to you by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy, a restaurant services company located in Atlanta, Georgia. And our studio sponsor is Bone Frog Coffee. Patriotism served daily in a cup. Well, the redistricting has started to occur. You know, for many months, I've been saying the Supreme Court had a case pending before it. It is Louisiana versus Calais, and it was a case that considered whether racial gerrymandering was a legitimate activity by states. Well, you may be interested to know that gerrymandering started in 1812 by Governor Gerry from the Northeast. And someone said that new district looks like a salamander, and that got changed or morphed into a gerrymander. Now you know where gerrymander came from. And so we've seen a lot of gerrymandering over the last 200 years. Since 1964, minorities in this country had an unfair advantage that was designed to balance the unfair advantage that whites had had for 150 years in this country, where blacks were effectively restricted or prohibited from voting at all. But in 1964, under Lyndon Johnson, the Voting Rights Act was passed, and it permitted gerrymandering on the basis of race. So for the last 60 years, minorities have had the ability to be represented directly in the Congress of the United States. Now, that made a lot of sense in 1964. Does it make sense in 2026? I have advocated here on this show that it does not. Blacks have been given the franchise. They've been given every advantage that you could get. They say they want reparations, and my position is that they've received reparations for the last 60 years. They have been able to get free housing, free food, free clothing, free education, free Obama phones, and then they claim that whites feel superior. Well, if whites are not superior, then why would you need an advantage economically, socially, civically? So I think that the country has come around to realizing that whites are not superior. Blacks are capable of standing on their own 2 feet today. And we've also seen a movement in this country where many blacks have moved away from the Democratic Party and have shown a willingness to vote based on their values and their ideals. That happened in the 2024 election, when prior to that, the most that Republicans could get in the black community was about 14%. In 2024, President Trump got 20%, almost a 50% increase in the number of blacks who are willing to switch parties and vote Republican. So the sands of change have been shifting, and the Supreme Court in Louisiana versus Calais ruled that states could no longer draw congressional district maps based on race. Well, that has caused a whole flood of redistricting. In fact, here's a map that shows you just what the redistricting picture looks like. When you sift it all out, shake it up, spit it out, and bake the cake, Republicans have picked up somewhere between 7 and 9 new House seats. Just this week, Republicans added 1 new House seat in Tennessee. Meanwhile, the governor of Mississippi, Tate Reeves, he canceled that state's redistricting plans and said that the legislature would have to redistrict in advance of 2027. He said he also expected to redraw legislative and Supreme Court lines between now and 2027 elections in Mississippi as well. So I'm not sure why he um, didn't follow many of the other southern states in redistricting. Georgia just called a special session, in fact, this week to meet and look at its congressional district maps. And you want to stay tuned to the show today because we had a great interview earlier this week with Burt Jones. He is among the leading candidates for governor of Georgia. He and Rick Jackson are effectively in the margin of error in a tie for the Georgia governor's race, both polling somewhere around 27%. Some polls show Rick Jackson slightly ahead. Others show Burt Jones narrowly ahead. Of course, the only poll that really matters is on election day, and that's coming up this next Tuesday. So if you're in Georgia and you want to have your voice heard, get out and vote. Vote early if you can. Most places are wrapping up their early voting, but you still got time in many jurisdictions to vote early, or you can come on election day this coming Tuesday, and I really encourage you to do so. Unless I've got that wrong, it may be a week from Tuesday, but I believe it is this Tuesday. Anthony, fact check that for me, will you please? See what day is election day in Georgia. I did know, I should know, and I'm just, I think it's this Tuesday, but I could be mistaken. It may be a week from Tuesday. Producer Anthony will check, and I'll let you know what he says here. Anyway, regardless, the Rick Jackson and Burt Jones rather, are in a dead heat. Now, we had a great interview with Burt earlier this week. I do hope and am encouraging people to vote for Burt Jones. I'm telling you, Rick Jackson has got so much sketchy stuff surrounding him that if Georgians elect Rick Jackson, they're going to get exactly what they deserve. And the primary, yes, it is May the 19th. Thank you, Anthony. So it's just this Tuesday. But Rick Jackson, he has given money to Stacey Abrams, to Liz Cheney, to the former lieutenant governor of Georgia, and as well as to Brad Raffensperger. I mean, he is a wolf in sheep's clothing if I've ever seen one. And I just don't trust him. And I don't think he's a real conservative Republican. He just came out of left field. And he's accused Burt Jones of using his office to enrich his father because they want to build a hospital in rural Georgia. I actually think that should be celebrated, not condemned. But Rick Jackson has made his entire career off of government contracts. So the hypocrisy is just overflowing. And anybody who would give money to Jeff Duncan, in my opinion, is not a Republican, a conservative Republican. And he and Duncan are joined at the hip. He was one of his largest donors when Duncan ran against David Schaefer. And I just really don't have a good feeling for Rick Jackson. Also, he excluded a journalist from North Georgia from a campaign event because the journalist chose to ask him some tough questions. So they just wouldn't let him come in to a campaign event at a public restaurant in Ellijay, Georgia, at the barbecue place there, which I visited when I campaigned for Attorney General. And so if a candidate for office is afraid of a country journalist, that would be Brian Pritchard, BKP Radio, And Byron's megaphone is pretty small, folks. But if a candidate for governor will not stand up and answer reasonable questions posed by a journalist and then be petty enough to exclude him from a campaign event, I say that that is de facto makes him incapable and unqualified to be governor of the state of Georgia. What are you going to do when the stakes are really high? So I'm just saying I'm not feeling it. I am publicly endorsing Burt Jones. I'm sorry, Burt. I don't know if that helps or hurts you, but hopefully for the people that are listening to this program in Georgia, it will help. They have a choice. They can turn the radio off and go listen to the swamp creature Eric Erickson if they want to. But anyway, that's the way I see the Georgia governor's race. Stay tuned and listen to our very interesting interview with Burt Jones. As I said, today's studio sponsor, not today's, this month's studio sponsor is Bone Frog Coffee. And if you really want to help a veteran, then just send them a monthly subscription to Bone Frog Coffee. It's not just about caffeine, it's a steady reminder from home. Every bag tells a story. The company was founded by a retired Navy SEAL who knows what mail call feels like and what it means to someone serving in the armed services away from home. It's a practical gift with a lot of emotional weight. So that's Bone Frog Coffee. You can check them out at bonefrogcoffee.com. So President Trump is just back from China. I think that it was a very successful trip by any measure. People have been resoundingly complimentary of President Trump. And interestingly, he took a slew of U.S. business people with him, including Elon Musk, Justin Judson, oh gosh darn it, the NVIDIA guy, I always stumble on his name, Jensen Wang, Tim Cook from Apple, Larry Fink, Steve Schwartzman, Kelly Ortberg, who came home with a big contract for Boeing, of which she is chairman of the board, Brian Sykes from Cargill. You know, China gets a lot of its food from the United States. They are as dependent on the U.S. for their food supply as we are on them for precious metals and computer chips and a lot of products that they have found a way to produce cheaper than American business does. And therein lies the rub, because what China has done for the last 30 years is to buy our products, not on the open market, or just, not in mass, just buy enough of them that they can tear them apart, reverse engineer them, and then sell them in America a lot cheaper than American industries can, because China doesn't have any major research and development. And so, of course, they can sell the product cheaper, but it's just fundamentally wrong. And that has been a source of real consternation from American business. But we get precious metals and pharmaceuticals from China, and as well as ingredients for our chips. But no one can make chips as efficiently and as effectively as U.S. manufacturers like Intel and like NVIDIA. And so there's very much a high wire act that is being undertaken between how much do we sell to China, and American businesses want to sell to China, NVIDIA included, but there are those who consider it a national security threat to let them have access to our technology, knowing that they're going to pick it apart, reverse engineer it, and then try and sell it back to our people in this country at a much lesser cost. And that doesn't help American industry in the long run. The one thing that President Trump did not do is weaken our resolve vis-a-vis Taiwan. And a lot of people thought that Trump may go to Beijing and weaken the Reagan 6 assurances that he made to Taiwan, which was that we are not going to enter into negotiations between Taiwan and China. We are going to continue to sell armaments to Taiwan. And so a lot of people were concerned that Trump may go over there and trade some of those promises away, and he did not. And so that is a good thing. Trump says that he and Xi have a very good relationship. And in fact, Xi is going to come to the United States in September to attend a state dinner. And, you know, Biden said that China was our competitor. I haven't heard Trump characterize China at all. The only thing that he has done is said that he and Xi have a good relationship and that there's a lot to be gained by our countries working together. And you know, who can fault that? And especially when Trump does draw lines in the sand when it comes to not taking an unfair advantage of the United States. And he has used tariffs as a pretty big stick when China has crossed the line. So I think Trump's approach is much better than Biden's, even though then Biden would allow people from China to just walk across our southern border unvetted. We suspect that there are thousands, I've read as many as 150,000 Chinese fit military age men living in the United States, and I think they're undocumented and unaccounted for. That makes me very uneasy. The other thing I could not understand was why Trump was willing to allow 600,000 Chinese students to come to the United States. The other issue that is very concerning to me about China is that we have Chinese people that come to the United States, have a baby. By law, by our Constitution, that child then is a United States citizen. Then what happens is that they take the child, go back to China, where the child is educated in Chinese schools, presumably indoctrinated in the CCP, and then years later they can walk across our border with a U.S. passport. That has got many people really concerned, me included. And why Trump is not taking a more hardline stance on that and stopping that practice, I don't really understand. I think he doesn't want to do anything right now that is going to harm our relationship with China. And meanwhile, as a result of that trip, China pledged to invest $50 billion in new contracts with U.S. industry. And so I think for now, I think Trump's policy, at least it appears to me, that his concept is keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And that's probably a good thing. And we have very little to gain by saying that we're going to be enemies with China. I mean, that really gets us nowhere. I do think that we should protect our intellectual property. I do think we should continue to be very firm with China in not violating this country's laws, our immigration laws, not finding a loophole in our laws to take advantage of that could someday come back and really harm us. You know, 150,000 people, it's a lot. But when you look at a country with 350 million, it's a drop in the bucket. But let's identify those 150,000 and then vet them and decide who can stay and who has to go. That would be the approach I would encourage our leaders to adopt. The press, they do what the press does. They tried to stir stuff up and say that Jensen Huang had not been invited to go to China. And President Trump immediately tweeted out, well, that's odd because he's sitting on Air Force One as we speak. That was on their outbound leg. So Trump said Jensen is currently on Air Force One unless I ask him to leave, which is highly unlikely. CNBC's, I call it CNBS, reporting is incorrect, or as they say in politics, fake news. That's another interesting thing to me. Trump doesn't call them untruthful or liars. He just continues to refer to the press as fake news. And that seems to me to be a pretty soft way of wording it. I might tend to be more direct about it, but that's Trump being Trump. And he seems to know exactly how to strike the right chord many, many times. And then there are those times that he goes way overboard, and you know what I'm thinking about probably as well as I do. When he attacks the dead, I think that causes people to cringe, and I wish he would tone that down. But anyway, that's, like I say, that's just Trump being Trump. Rubio is one of the leading advocates for taking back, or not taking back, but intervening in Cuba, shall we say. And he also has been at the forefront of negotiating order in the Straits of Hormuz. Here's what he had to say on the China trip as well.
Economies are melting down because of this crisis in the Straits. They're going to be buying less Chinese product, and the Chinese exports are going to drop precipitously. So it's in their interest to resolve this. We hope to convince them to play a more active role in getting Iran to walk away from what they're doing now and trying to do now in the Persian Gulf.
Well, Trump had some words about China as well, and in the context of the war with Iran. And he is really trying to get China to ally with the United States and get China to help put the pressure on Iran. Here's what the president had to say.
President Xi would like to see a deal made. He would like to see a deal made. And he did offer, he said, if I can be of any help at all, I would like to be of help. Because,
he did say that.
Yeah, he did say that. And look, anybody that buys that much oil has obviously got some kind of a relationship with him. But he said, I would love to be a help. If I can be of any help whatsoever, he'd like to see the Hormuz Strait open. He said, if I could be of any help whatsoever, I would like to help.
If you're listening to us today on the John Fredericks Media Network, you might want to come on over to getter.com, hit the live button, and look for John Gordon Truth. You can do the same thing on Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram. We stream our broadcast every Saturday from noon to 12 and Sunday on those social media platforms. Rubio also discussed China, or rather Cuba. Cuba is hurting. They got their oil illegally, I guess. It was against our sanctions that we placed on Venezuela, but Venezuela was exporting the oil to Cuba against an embargo that the U.S. had established. They, for a long time, just flicked us off. And then Trump said, okay, we're going to take over Venezuela. They went in, swept in, and got Maduro. And then they were able to really effectively put up a blockade so that Cuba cannot get any oil. Well, that is having a very deleterious effect on Cubans. Some call it inhumane. I wonder about it myself. But the fact of the matter is Cuba's been a thorn in our side since the 1960 missile crisis. And Trump is basically saying no more. And here is Rubio talking about Cuba.
The State Department just re-upped the offer of $100 million in aid to Cuba. Cuba's foreign minister says that's an absolute lie, that there is no money coming. Are there any strings attached to that $100 million in aid?
The only strings attached is that they have to be distributed by non-governmental sources like the Catholic Church. I was at the Vatican last week. I spoke to the Catholic Church again. They're willing to play that role.
So what's the holdup? Cuba's lying?
Cuba. They're holdup. They're lying. They lie all the time. I mean, how can he say it's not a real offer? We've made it to them privately. We're not making it public. There's $100 million. By the way, we've given them humanitarian aid. After the hurricane, we provided them $6 million of humanitarian aid, $3 million of which was distributed, $3 million of which is still being held up, but is available for them. Now we're saying here's $100 million of humanitarian aid. So I don't know if they watch your broadcast in Cuba, but if they are, the Cuban people should know there's $100 million of food and medicine available for them right now, and the only reason it's not reaching the Cuban people is because of the regime.
No strings attached.
The only string attached is it has to be distributed by I don't want non-governmental organizations. This can't be humanitarian aid that the government steals for itself.
Well, pretty good condition if you ask me. And it seems to me that when you zoom out to 30,000 feet and look at what's going on, you've got the United States that is blocking oil reaching Cuba, which is really having a very negative effect on everybody that lives there. They can't drive. They can't afford to go out. It's hurting the restaurants. Nick Shirley said that doctors are operating in the dark by flashlight. The conditions are not good. And then on the other hand, we're going to give them $100 million in aid for food and medicine. So it sort of is like, okay, well, we're going to give you a black eye and now we're going to give you an ice pack to put on it so you feel better. I just don't know. It's the blockade is clearly designed to pressure the Cuban government. And one thing that was really odd to me is that while President Trump was in China with Marco Rubio, John Radcliffe, the head of the CIA, was shown and reported to be in Cuba negotiating on behalf of the United States with the Cubans. Now, I've been a political scientist and political observer for many, many years, since I was in college 50 years ago as a politics and government major. And I can never recall the head of the CIA going to a foreign country to negotiate. The other thing that's curious to me is that it happened at a very interesting time. There are reports coming out that people entered the office of Tulsi Gabbard and unlawfully collected documents that she was in the process of declassifying pursuant to a presidential order relating to John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King, MK Ultra, and the use of psychedelics in different places around the globe, like in San Francisco and in a community in France where they supposedly spiked the water with it, and everybody in the town went crazy. I mean, I've not pulled any punches that I think that there is a cancer inside our own federal government and that it needs to be surgically removed. And I think that cancer points straight to the alphabet agencies, and in particular, the CIA. Now, this was first reported by Fox. Let's look at the clip now, and you can judge for yourself what you think.
It's just in, John. The CIA just raided Tulsi Gabbard's office. Agents hauled out dozens of boxes, files on the JFK assassination and MK Ultra, the CIA mind control operation, which she was in the process of declassifying. Today's whistleblower said it during his deposition, and Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna confirmed it moments ago.
The reason why this is troubling is, A, there was an executive order that the president had directed the full declassification of JFK, but then also to the MK Ultra files. The CIA famously has said that, all documents were released and other documents had been destroyed. So these are allegedly those documents that apparently never existed.
Well, I mean, I've never heard of anything like that. Elements of our own government going into another government agency, actually their boss, and just grabbing documents. It sounds beyond illegal to me. I think those people should be identified and they should be prosecuted and they should be held accountable. But can you imagine the going to those lengths? And the CIA must be really running scared now. And I do get the sense that the CIA and the alphabet agencies are growingly in disfavor with the American people. I've been talking about it for the last 4 years. I've said that this federal government is rotten to its core. I have also said that I would love to find out who the puppet master is, but not only can I not identify the wizard, I can't even find the curtain. I'm not the only one. Here's Ron Johnson asking a very similar question.
There's no curiosity on the other side about what's happening inside the deep state. And that's really my question. Who is running the deep state? I've got example after example in agency after agency, very, very legitimate oversight requests. I subpoena documents. You don't get squat.
Now, that is a United States senator who constitutionally is charged with overseeing agencies of the federal government. And he is saying that when he asks for documents and actually issues a lawful subpoena for documents, that they just flick him off. Folks, it's got to stop. They are destroying this country. Who do they think they are? Who do they think they are? I think it's time for the American people to rise up and say no more. I think it's time for the administration to say, you cannot do this stuff. You cannot go into your boss's office, steal documents that are there, that she has collected lawfully pursuant to a presidential executive order, and that you're going to go into her office, break into her safe, and retrieve the documents that she is in the process of declassifying because it is going to expose you as the thugs that you are. And it's not the whole CIA, okay? Every time I talk like this, I have to preface it and say that it's the bad people inside the agency that are doing this. And I don't know how they get away with it. But it seems to me that it's very curious that it happened when their direct boss, John Radcliffe, was out of the country. And I don't know where Tulsi Gabbard was when the office raid occurred. But I think it's very, very disturbing. And I think that it shows just how far the deep state will go to try and protect its own hide. And I don't think that it's going to ever end until the American people demand that it stop. So I hope that that is going to happen. I think that that there has been a real, I get the sense that there's a real pushback in the country, and that we are going to see a new day when it comes to holding the deep state accountable and insisting that they follow the laws just like the rest of us. They are not allowed to operate inside of this country. And not only are they operating inside this country, but they're going into their boss's office and stealing her papers. How do you ever suppose they could, how would you imagine they could ever get away with this? And my sense is that there is some serious concern for their own safety. And just like the House Minority Leader said, the intelligence has 6 ways to Sunday. that they can get you if they decide that they want to. And I think we're seeing it played out right in front of us. Of course, the CIA say, oh, no, that didn't happen. It wasn't us. That's just fake news. But the Congresswoman from Florida that has been charged with releasing these files to the American people, she certainly is saying that it did happen. So we'll stay tuned. We'll keep you posted on how it evolves. I think that hope exists in South Florida, where John Brennan is under investigation by a grand jury in the U.S. Federal District Court, and it will be interesting to see what comes out of that. And will we ever get true, real accountability? I don't know. I certainly hope so, because I don't like the ways that these agencies act and the way they behave, clearly illegally and off the books. We need a new day in America where that doesn't happen, I do believe. All right, well, today's broadcast is brought to you by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. They're a restaurant services company in Atlanta. They take care of the front of the house and the back of the house. They'll pick up your waste vegetable oil where they refine it for biodiesel fuel. They'll also maintain your grease traps, clean your vent hoods, and sanitize the front of the house and the back of the house. They also even offer pressure washing for your loading dock and parking area. So if you're tired of dirty, inconsistent service and automated attendance, check out PCRenergy.com. You'll find them in Atlanta, right there at www.pcrenergy.com. Our studio sponsor is Bone Frog Coffee, and it's veteran-owned, founded by retired Navy SEAL Tim Cruikshank as a tribute to his fallen teammates in the Naval Special Warfare community. We're going to get Tim to come on The Truth in the very near future and talk to us about his time in the Navy Special Forces and Bone Frog Coffee, where each bag tells a story and gives a peek behind the curtain of special ops. If you don't already know, the Bone Frog is a sacred symbol in the SEAL teams that represents those who give their lives in combat and is a reminder of the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom and the American way of life. Every bag, premium, small batch roasted from top shelf Arabica beans, smooth, low acid, no Robusta junk. Think bold blends like Frogman Dark Roast or the classic Bone Frog Medium. Tastes like freedom in a cup. And here's the real deal. A chunk of every sale goes right to helping SEAL vets and Gold Star families, aiming for $500,000 donated. Coffee with a cause? You bet. That's not a slogan. It's brotherhood brewed daily. Head to bonefrogcoffee.com, snag some K-Cups, whole bean, or merchandise. Use the promo code TRUTH. Start your day just like I do. Fuel up, stay sharp, and remember, service before self. Support our veterans and thank Bone Frog for sponsoring our studio. Check them out now at bonefrogcoffee.com. All right, we've got Robert Bork up next. He's going to talk about the antitrust debates that are going on in America as we speak. We're talking to him about Spirit Airlines, the Meatpackers Monopoly. Do you know that 4 meatpacking companies in America dominate that industry? Like they have 85 to 90% of the market. And the new paradox that we're seeing emerge, antitrust and the threat of conservative socialism. So we had a very enlightening conversation with Robert Bork. I hope you'll stay tuned and listen to him. And then after that, Burt Jones, candidate for Lieutenant Governor of Georgia. He is my pick for governor. He is the current Lieutenant Governor running for governor. And in my view, it's anybody but Rick Jackson, Brad Raffensperger, and Chris Carr. Plus, Burt is a true American and a real Georgian. He was captain of the University of Georgia football team, and the year that he was captain, they won the SEC championship, and he has been in public service most of his adult life. He served in the state senate, and then as lieutenant governor presiding over the state senate, and now is aiming to be Georgia's next governor. I hope he achieves his goal. All right. Well, have a very good rest of your weekend, and let's get right to our first interview. Here is our interview with Robert Bork Jr. You may remember him as Robert Bork's son. Robert Bork was a nominee to the U.S. Supreme Court under Reagan, and Robert Bork is continuing to represent the family name very well. Just a few weeks ago, we had Robert Bork Jr. on The Truth, and we had a very enjoyable conversation. You may recognize the name. He is the son of Robert Bork, who was a nominee to the Supreme Court in the 80s. And Robert Bork's a specialist in antitrust. In fact, he's written a book called The New Paradox. Robert, welcome back to The Truth.
Here, I'm just going to put this here for the rest of the show.
Shameless self-promotion. But put it up there. Put it somewhere where we can see it. And it is available on Amazon, I'm sure. Where else?
That's it. Only Amazon.
All right. And how's the book doing since we spoke
I guess
last?
it's doing fine. I don't really look. I spend most of my time talking to people like you, which is more fun than looking at the numbers. But it does have a great review on the back from Phil Graham. So if I've done nothing else, I've got Phil Graham to like my book.
Phil Graham, the very respected former U.S. Senator from Texas.
Correct.
Who I had the pleasure of meeting many years ago. He's a tall guy, I'll tell you. So Spirit Airlines declared bankruptcy, or is on the verge of declaring if they haven't already. But they went out of business last weekend. And we saw hundreds of thousands of travelers stranded, and inconvenience is a trivial way to describe it. And our United States government had a chance to save Spirit Airlines and elected not to. Give us your insight into why the government did not come to the rescue of Spirit.
Well, which time? A couple of years ago when they tried to merge.
Let's talk about this weekend, and then we'll go back and pull more layers of the onion out.
Yeah.
Because obviously, the Trump administration, Sean Duffy is blaming Biden and what was his name, the former head of the.
Well, it's a good opportunity for them to take a shot at Pete Buttigieg, the former transportation secretary, because
right, who may be running for president. Yeah,
it's all politics. Look, here's the unvarnished. Well, there may be a little varnished, but I'm not sure. But this is the unvarnished truth about this. Spirit was a basket case, and it was a basket case really by design. They chose, when they started this thing up, to be an ultra low cost airline. Now, what that means is that's great while it's working for passengers, get great prices. Maybe they're a little uncomfortable by the crowded seating. Maybe, it's a little difficult to get where you want to go sometimes. But it was, they never had apparently they never had an accident, which is, I think, worth noting. Basically, the problem for them was that they designed an airline that was ultra low cost, which meant that they had no margin for error. If something went wrong in the economy, fuel prices or something, there was no way for them to go. They couldn't raise prices because their market was ultra low cost pricing. So,
do you think the pricing was that sensitive that they couldn't have just bumped up pricing here and there, charged an extra buck for
it ended up
baggage
alienating their market. I mean, they apparently, they charge money to give you peanuts. They charge money for your baggage. They charge money for everything, extra fees. And people don't like that sort of stuff. I think I understand the reason they did it, so that they could have an actual airfare that looked lower than everybody else in an attractive
Sure.
business.
But also survive.
Yeah, but in the end, if you run a business like that, you don't have any cushion, really. You don't have any extra, cash on hand to deal with crises. And of course, one of the big problems for them was COVID. Apparently, that just really took a bite out of their business, a big one, and ultimately they declared bankruptcy. Now, they thought they had a solution when they tried to merge with JetBlue, but the Justice Department under Joe Biden, who never saw a merger that they liked, they decided to block it, and they were successful in doing so because they basically don't like capitalism and they don't like mergers and acquisitions. And they one of their complaints was, well, that'll just make the fifth largest airline, and we can't have that. So they brought a case in the U.S. District Court, and Judge William Young blocked that $3.8 billion JetBlue Spirit merger in January of 2024, ruling it violated antitrust laws by eliminating a key ultra low cost competitor, which he argued would harm budget conscious travelers and raise ticket prices. Funny, that's sort of where we are right now.
That's what I was going to say. The end result is that we've eliminated competition, and what's going to happen? Ticket prices are going to go up because there will be more demand for fewer air seats.
You are jumping ahead to the punchline. Yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to steal your thunder. You got excited there.
But from my perspective, when I look at this, I think, okay, well, they torpedoed. And this is the real paradox. They torpedoed a private sector solution to a bailout. Avoiding the bailout, they torpedoed a private sector solution, and implicitly, they voted for liquidation. Now, that was a couple of years ago, but that's where they are, where they got themselves to. The result is exactly the opposite of what regulators promise, which is more choices and lower prices. But what they got now is fewer choices and higher prices. And what you mentioned, and I'm sorry, I went back in history first. The Trump administration said it would look at a bailout. And I think they probably did as best they could to, come up with something that would work. Donald Trump likes buying private equity, private assets, and he was prepared to, buy up to 90% of the company. But there were other people ahead of him, basically in line, and those were all the creditors, the hedge funds and others who owned Spirit stock. And I think they just decided, this is not good for us. We should just shut the thing down, start selling the assets. We'll get our money, such as it is, more and faster if we do that. And that's what happened. I don't think the government made whatever offer it felt was reasonable, and it wasn't enough to placate the creditors. So that's where Spirit is now no longer in business, and that's really unfortunate for all those people left, stuck at the airport and with cruises the next day that they can't get to and all that other stuff. But I think we're probably better off. As I wrote on Sunday in the Wall Street Journal, I just have a real problem with state capitalism, and that's what Donald Trump likes to do. He likes to put money into businesses, your money, my money, taxpayer money, into companies, and he likes to brag how Intel has made the taxpayer $5 billion or something since they bought 10% of it. But it is really a problem to have government ownership of private companies. Here's just one thing I think about. Okay, suppose that Spirit deal had gone through. and the government now basically owned an airline. What does that mean for all the other airlines? Would Spirit be a favored provider? Would they not have to meet the same regulatory standards because Donald Trump wants to make sure that they succeed and they make money and all that? Would he give them a break on their safety standards? I mean, he would say no, but of course, but then the other airlines competing would be competing against an airline that had the comfort of being owned by the government, basically without fear of the marketplace making any difference to them. The government, once it bought 90%, wouldn't let it fail. So the marketplace would be totally disrupted, as it is now in a way. But guess what? The marketplace is adapting to the failure of Spirit. Frontier apparently is rushing in with steep discounts to try to buy Spirit customers, to inherit the customer base. Another airline called Avalo and Breeze Airways are expanding fast, and they're pitching like a nicer version of the Spirit experience. Allegiant Air is quietly picking up leisure travelers on routes that Spirit used to dominate. And of course, the big airlines, and this is the real story, the big airlines like Delta, United, and American, they are using the opportunity to move down market and offering basic economy fares. And they can afford to undercut everyone else because they've got premium passengers subsidizing those cheap seats that Spirit didn't have. So in the short term, you'll see deals, airlines fighting over stranded customers. But in the long term, fewer, I think, true low-cost, ultra low-cost carriers, which means less price pressure, which means higher prices pretty much for everybody. And Spirit used to keep everyone honest, but it's not there. And so again, another negative effect of a stupid decision to intervene in the marketplace and block that merger between JetBlue and Spirit.
So I used to, and I'm now maybe closer to neutral, but I was very anti-government owning equity in businesses for the very reasons that you highlighted. But then I watched the All In podcast. Are you familiar?
I don't think so, no.
With David Sachs, Jason Calazone, Jermuth.
I think you mentioned this to me before, but I haven't seen it.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm a pretty big fan. And they use the example of the government bailout of General Motors and Stellantis. And so we loaned them hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe into the billions. I'm not sure. I don't remember. Mm-hmm. And we got the money back.
No, you didn't.
And we got...
No, well, you didn't. You got...
All right. Well, riddle me that.
That thing lost money for taxpayers. The General Motors one and the Stellantis one. Those lost money for taxpayers. Now, again, I have different opinions of these things than I do about this Spirit thing. First of all, when General Motors came begging for a bailout, that was at a time when the economy was really tanking.
Sure.
And this was important to preserve, I think, an industry that was critical to the future of our economy, to the present and the future of the economy. One ultra discount airline is not the same thing. And the economy actually is booming right now. So it may be disruptive to the airline market, but it wasn't a question of life and death for or at least for the overall economy. And that's why a lot of people think that the bailout of General Motors was important in the context in which it was happening. This is a different context. This is a different time. The economy is doing much better than it was at that time. And again, maybe it's okay to take a drubbing on the stock price, but ultimately, we did not make back the money we put in, and the taxpayers paid the cost.
So you are mostly right, but there was both a loan, which was repaid, but there was also equity that was invested in General Motors, which highlights the problem, because when the government then later sold its GM stock, it did that at a loss of about $10 billion to the taxpayers.
Right. Okay.
So, but had it gone the other way,
right, and we're having a mostly peaceful conversation, right?
What's that now? Yeah, of course we are. But the flip side is that had General Motors stock improved, then it could have been a boon for the taxpayers. And aren't there countries around the world that have like sovereign funds where they actually invest in companies, and it's a big windfall for their citizenry?
I'm sure there are. I don't know that Saudi Arabia, having lost millions, maybe billions, in Gulf, would agree with this entirely. But yes, there are sovereign funds, but there's also this moral question. I mean, is that how you want to run your economy? Is that really going to make for a better economy, more innovation, better jobs, more wealth created, to have the government be the banker of first resort? I don't think it is, and I think it's as they say, a moral hazard of sorts to do that as well.
Well, on balance, I have to agree with you. I'm in the Reagan school of, hi, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. And, it's just a fallacy. And every time government touches something, they seem to have the unique ability to mess it up. But in the case of Spirit, how much were they looking for from the U.S. government?
I don't know that number, but I think I read somewhere $500 million.
Well, that's real money.
That's real money.
Well, it is a dicey area. I do feel bad for the customers of Spirit, because as you accurately pointed out, now they have fewer choices and fares are likely to increase. So I don't know how that's good for anybody really, but the alternative of having a government bailout may actually be a worse and more bitter pill to swallow. I just wish and don't understand why the closing of the airline couldn't have happened in a more orderly fashion over a longer, although short, period of time, like a week or two, to allow people to get home. It seemed very callous in the end.
Well, I think they were spending money they didn't have, and had been, and somebody just made the decision that we're not doing that anymore.
Yes. The creditors, I'm thinking, came to town and said, no, the party's over.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now you've also been following the Trump administration's apparent focus on the meatpackers and looking at antitrust as a tool to break them up. I'm not sure.
I think that's what they're talking about, what they're thinking about. Basically in this country, we have, four meatpacking companies, two of which are foreign owned, which makes everybody a little bit nervous.
One's from Brazil, is that right?
I think that's right.
That's the big one, I think.
Yeah. And I always thought this, just as an aside, when they would, back in, was it the 80s, when people were jumping up and down about the Japanese, or maybe it was the 70s, the Japanese are buying real estate, they're buying our skyscrapers in New York and all that. And my thought was, well, what are they going to do with them? I mean, suppose they decide that's it, we're getting out of here. Well, they're not going to put them on a trailer and drive them back to Japan. The buildings, the assets are still going to be here. and it'll all happen in court, and there'll be financial issues, but ultimately those assets will stay here. And I don't think they're talking about, they were talking about, knocking them down. That would be stupid because they'd have nothing of value left.
So those four meat packers are Tyson, JBS, which is the Brazilian company, Cargill, and National Beef Packing.
Yeah.
They own 80% of the market. That I did not know that. That's news to me.
Yeah. Well,
that is rather surprising.
It's a big share that these four companies control among them. But I gotta push back a little bit on this, unless the government knows something I don't know. What actual evidence of wrongdoing do they have, or is this just frustration over high grocery prices? I mean, I having worked in government, I know sometimes when you have bad things going on, you want to create an appearance that you're doing something about it.
Exactly. And Trump people are really beating the drum that he promised to lower prices, and prices are not coming down. That's not totally fair because they have come down in some areas. But right now, the war in Iran is causing the price of oil to go up, and energy, petroleum in particular, affects everything we do basically in our society. We drive cars to get places. The trucks deliver the food to restaurants and grocery stores. Plastic is largely a petroleum-based product. So it is kind of infused into our economy at virtually every level. The thing I don't understand in that context, we take a brief detour, we don't buy any oil from Iran. So I don't understand why the constraints on Iran oil production is having a ripple effect in the United States, where we get all of our oil from domestically.
Well,
we are energy independent.
There's nothing more complicated than oil prices. You've got the influence of the cartel, although that seems to be kind of maybe breaking up a little bit with the United Arab Emirates backing out of the cartel after 50 years or something. But here's the deal. I mean, that was my first thought too, when prices were going up. I thought, well, didn't Donald Trump tell us that we had more oil than the rest of the world, and we didn't have to worry about oil, yet our prices are going up? Well, I think that's because oil is a global market. And so something like this affects the global price, and the global price is what we go by, not just the price in Pennsylvania, where they're pumping natural gas out of the ground, or oil in the Permian Basin. So I think we are held hostage, frankly, by the global price. Now, that's too bad, but it is what it is. But I do think that the president is correct that if we can just get this Iran situation under control, it will in fact quickly reduce oil prices. Maybe not as quickly as we'd like, but it will.
Well, I wish he had called me before he went into Iran, because I would have told him, Mr. President, wars are easy to start and really hard to stop.
This is true.
And I think that's what's playing out in real time right in front of us.
No, I think the Iranians are devious and clever, because without a lot of assets, without a lot of military assets, they're quite able to cause global disruption. It's impressive, and that they are able to do so much with so little, and it really will be a test of will. Frankly, not just the president's, but the will of our allies and the will of our consumers, if they can just hang on, which they don't have a lot of choice about, I suppose. But this will end, I think, favorably, and they had to pay higher gas prices for a while, which is easy for me to say because I don't drive that much, but much harder on people who are driving in to DC from on the Beltway. That's very expensive.
All right. So you also made mention, going back to the Meatpackers, that Chuck Grassley is not down with this, and he's a pretty powerful member of the U.S. Senate from Iowa, no less.
Yes. So he's been harping on this for a long time. He's a rancher and a farmer in Iowa, on top of being one of the most powerful United States senators. So I think this is a gift to him to some extent for doing this, and by doing this. And again, though, I don't know what the Justice Department has in terms of evidence, but high prices of themselves do not prove illegality. They can reflect all, and we were just talking about this about oil too. They can reflect, supply constraints, higher input costs, and just strong demand. So, and again, it's not illegal to be, to have a large market share. What's illegal is if you got it by collusion, and if you're colluding on prices, and they'll have to prove that. So just bringing this investigation is not proof of anything.
Well, how does that explain the AT&T breakup in the 90s? I mean, were they guilty of, you can't collude with yourself. I mean,
well, they were colluding with the government.
They had extreme market share.
They were colluding with the government. They were a government-created monopoly. Telephony was very expensive, and the government thought it would be better to have it all under one company, which they did, and I'm sure AT&T and its shareholders thought this was a great idea. But ultimately, it was a restraint on innovation and on wealth creation. When they broke up AT&T, suddenly you had a bunch of telephone companies. Suddenly you had, the beginnings of the wireless market. Suddenly you had, growth and expansion and innovation and wealth creation and job creation in that industry that you'd never had before. Mm-hmm. So, but it was a government created monopoly, and those are bad under any circumstance.
Fascinating stuff. Robert Bork Jr., he is the president and board member of the Bork Group, a public affairs agency. He also wrote an op-ed piece for the Wall Street Journal just last week about the Spirit Airlines debacle. And he is an author, a business person, and hasten to add, a real patriot. Thank you for coming on The Truth today, Robert. It's been a pleasure having you.
The best one. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. You bet. You can't get much more Georgia raised and educated and a real Georgia bulldog than Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones. He joins us right now on this edition of The Truth. Burt Jones, welcome to The Truth.
Hey, good to be with you, John. Hope you're doing well. Appreciate you having me on.
It is a pleasure to have you and an honor. I'm really very proud of you, Burt. I've not known you for a long time, but I've known you since 2021, and I've been able to follow your career. You really have dedicated a life to public service, haven't you?
Well, I've done a lot of it here. Obviously, I've still have my business that I've been running, and obviously in Georgia, John, as you well know, even the lieutenant governor's job is not a full-time job, so we all have day jobs besides our public service work. But we've done a lot, especially in the last 4 or 5 years. Obviously, when you and I first met, just trying to make sure Georgia didn't go into a purple or blue state. And we've been fighting for election integrity, been fighting for the America First agenda. And so it drew me in a lot more just because of the concern I had for where the state was tracking.
Well, you started your political career on the Water and Sewer Commission in Butts County, and you've really never left public service since then. That was what year? 2009.
Yeah,
where you served for 11 years.
I was appointed to that. it wasn't a real hard gig. We met once a month, and but yeah, obviously in a small town, if you have a little success, you get drawn in, and you want to be drawn in to be a part of the community and try to help navigate things.
Well, I respect that. And then you ran for the state Senate. You beat an incumbent, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I beat a 10-year incumbent. It was a 3-man race, and I won that without a runoff. And when I ran for lieutenant governor, it was a 4-person race in the primary, and I won that without a runoff. So I'm hoping to repeat that on Tuesday, John.
So I went to the penultimate source of knowledge, Grok, and tried to find out what the policy differences were between you and Rick Jackson. And I struggled to find much of anything about Rick Jackson's platform and what he is running on. How would you distinguish yourself on policy from Rick Jackson?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I was the first one that came out and with a platform, so to speak, talking about cutting taxes and cutting regulations and being strong on public safety and being strong on school choice issues and everything else. And in fact, most of these guys that I'm running against, they've all kind of adopted the same platform. The only problem is a lot of the things they're talking about are things that I've already gotten done as lieutenant governor on school choice, on getting boys out of girls sports, on cutting income tax. I've done that. Want to continue to do that. Cap property taxes. So these are all things that I've already done and want to continue to work on. But as far as best thing I can tell from the Jackson crowd is that they know how to throw some mud, and they know how to tell a bunch of lies. And I guess $100 million can make any piglet look like a prom queen, I guess, because that's what they're trying to do right now. And they have fooled a lot of people into believing he's something that he's not. The best thing I have going for me is him going out and getting on the stump, and because he's not a charismatic guy, he looks a lot older in person than he does on TV, and he's kind of a shell of a guy than what they make him appear on their Hollywood productions on TV.
The Georgia state budget is $36 billion. That is an astounding number to me, and the budget has grown exponentially over the last several years. Is there a way to stop the growth of state government? Do you favor that? Two-part question. B, is there an effort to rout out fraud, waste, and abuse in state government? With $36 billion, I'm guessing that there's some waste that could be curtailed.
I mean, obviously, there's always better way to do things, obviously, and that's in business, that's in anything, any organizations that you work in, and that's something, when I'm elected governor, I'm going to appoint people to those agencies that have a background in those different subject matters, and the first thing I'm going to task them with is let's figure out how we can do. Conduct our business more efficiently and see if, and I try to do it in a cost savings. Yes, our budget has grown in the last 10 years, John, but you also got to remember our population has grown in the last 10 years. And so that means you have a lot more, a lot more people for these services that, state government does provide. So that is one cause of it. And quite frankly, but look, there's a lot of pet projects that have gotten done in the last 10 years. And so sometimes as far as for legislators and everything else. And obviously those are things that, we need to rein a lot of those, inefficiencies in, and we also need to rein in a lot of the spending that we've been doing. But like I said, Georgia is the envy of the country because we do have a $14 billion surplus. We do have the lowest unemployment in the country right now, and we have had a lot of success from a job standpoint, economic development. But our population has really grown in the last 10 years, and it looks like it's going to continue to do so.
So when is enough? You said a $14 billion surplus. That is a staggering amount of money, and I'm surprised. I knew we had a surplus. I just didn't realize it was that large.
Sure.
Does the state law or the Constitution limit the surplus in any way? I know that in Florida it does. That they have actually reached the threshold of the maximum surplus that they can accumulate.
No. To answer that question, no. There's not a stipulation on how much you can put in there. I will say that we have been giving. We gave back over $3 billion in tax rebates in the last couple of years, and so obviously, you want to work towards. Under the Deal administration, we had zero surplus, and he's the one that started working towards putting together a rainy day fund. Obviously, because under his administration. They experienced the 08-09 downturn, which was pretty significant. So that's when the surplus got started, and it is we've put it it's grown under the Kemp administration, and quite frankly everybody's been expecting a hiccup in the national economy. We hope it's not similar to the 08, 09, 10 debacle that we had. In this country, but every time the economists start talking about that, we rethink how we want to use these surplus dollars. But what we have done is we've rebated those back to hardworking Georgians, and we've cut into it, and we have used some of it for big transportation projects. We put $2 billion from the surplus into the DOT for some significant transportation initiatives here in the state. And those are always going to be projects. If you go around the state, John, you can see all the different DOT projects that are going on right now. I'd like a lot of those projects to speed up a little bit. They need to start moving at the pace of the regular businesses, as opposed of how they're moving right now. But so anyway, so those are all things that we look at. Look, I'd much rather have the rainy day fund than not have it. But yes, keeping too much of those dollars on hand is not necessarily needed sometimes.
Well, you want to reduce the state income tax, or do you want to eliminate it? What is the yardstick?
My goal has always been to get it to zero, but I've always said you're not going to do it in 1 year. You're going to do it, gradually, multiple years, and we're going to be responsible in how we do it. We're not going to blow a hole in the budget like, say, Kansas did several years ago when they, just passed. They were going to go eliminate their state income tax, and they were going to do it in 1 or 2 years or something like that. And it really caused some havoc. It actually got all those Republicans beat out there in Kansas, which is a ruby red state. And so, so that's something that we're going to be responsible. We've lowered it 4 years in a row since I've been lieutenant governor, and I want to see us continue to do that because every other state around us right now is talking about moving towards doing that as well, and that represents your direct competition. Obviously, Florida doesn't have one, Tennessee doesn't have one, but now the Carolinas are talking about getting rid of theirs, and Mississippi voted last year to start getting rid of theirs. So we're going to work on that, and we're also going to address property taxes for homeowners because that's probably been the biggest question that or biggest issue that's been talked about out on the campaign trail was the price of property taxes. So we capped those this past year in the legislative session, and I think there's ways to adjust our homestead exemption that we have right now. It's at $2,000. I think we need to increase that to give homeowners a savings on their property taxes. It hadn't been updated since 1937. The only reason why it's $2,000 is because that was what the average price of a home was in 1937. So we need to get that up to modern day standards, and that would give immediate relief to homeowners on property taxes.
So I know you were a Georgia Bulldog. You were co-captain of the Georgia football team when it won the national championship. So I'm thinking education is one
SEC championship. I wish we'd won
SEC.
that. SEC.
I stand corrected. A minor correction with a lot of significance. But so where does Georgia stand today in education? I know education is the largest budget portion of the state budget for
Right.
K through 12 education, at least.
Yeah.
Where do
Well,
we rank
look, there's
nationally
always
in
room for
terms of
improvement,
the
and
education
we
product
passed
that you're
school
putting
choice
out?
2 years ago. I'm a big believer in public education, but I'm also a big believer in parents having more choices. And and I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We always got to be working on our literacy in our K through 12 public school systems, and that's something we really concentrated on this last year. At our university systems, we're back to teaching our future teachers phonics. Actually how to properly teach young people how to read and write and do arithmetic. And so that's something I'm glad that we've brought back into the educational realm at the higher education level. And so I'd like to see us continue to move towards full-scale school choice, but I also want to put more resources in the actual classroom with helping teachers. Teachers have way too much paperwork to do right now. In-classroom teachers have a ridiculous amount of paperwork, just red tape, bureaucratic red tape, and we need to clean that up because people go into the teaching profession. My mother was a public educator for 25 years. They're doing it because they love kids and they love educating kids and they love doing the job. So we need to concentrate on allowing them to do what they do best, and so, as opposed to trying to prepare these kids for all these standardized tests and all this other stuff that just is I don't think is doing our kids a good service by allowing that.
So you want to be governor of Georgia. You have served for the last 4 years as its lieutenant governor, and you've served next to Brian Kemp, the current governor. How would you assess his job as governor of Georgia? And you can just grade him. We're talking about education, human A, B, C, D, or F.
Yeah.
What do you assign?
Look, Governor Kemp and I have had a great working relationship. We've tackled every initiative that he has wanted to see accomplished, as well as the things that I've wanted to see accomplished, and we've had a good working relationship there. It's a three-legged stool there, the Georgia legislature. It is not a dictatorship. We have you have a Speaker of the House, and you have the House of Representatives, and then you have the Senate and the Lieutenant Governor and the Governor. So we have all had we don't always agree on everything, but we always try to figure out how to work through things, and every big initiative that we have set out to do. Whether it was a speaker on his literacy bill, whether it was this governor on his tort reform bill, or whether it was myself, looking at school choice. We've always figured out how everyone can get a victory, and we've always worked through whatever differences we might have. So I think the governor's done a really good job and just having a steady hand on things. I was on the Eric Erickson show yesterday, and he asked me, what almost a similar question, and I said, look, his defining moment is going to be during COVID, when everybody else was shutting states down. He opened Georgia back up, and it kept people working. It kept people paychecks in people's back pocket, and I think that was the big reason why he was reelected for his second term overwhelmingly. And so, he's, like I said, he's done a good job. Look, hey, John, I was probably the only one. I've got a good working relationship with him. I'm proud to have President Trump's endorsement. At one time, I was probably the only person in the country that had open dialogue with both President Trump and Governor Kemp.
Well, that's what I wanted to get into a little bit. I've raised and donated to Kemp in 2018
Right.
a pretty good amount of money. We had a fundraiser, a breakfast for him in Buckhead. 100
I
people
know.
showed up.
I'm waiting for that opportunity with you now. We need to get that breakfast. You and I do now, John. I'm just playing with you.
You got my phone number. Just give me a call. We'll do it. But I have, like you, I felt like that Kemp did a great job as governor. He's been right on most issues. The one litmus test that he failed for me in a major way was on election integrity in the 2020 election. How do you and Kemp reconcile that? And how do you get along with Brad Raffensperger and Chris Carr? I mean, it seems to me to be a little bit of a motley crew that you've got down there. I don't know how you can work with that group of constitutional officers for whom, I'm sorry, I just have a very low personal regard, Kemp accepted.
Yeah, well, I'll start with Chris Carr. He's such a he has been a very ineffective attorney general. I'll just say that and put it nicely.
Well, I ran against him for AG.
I do. I remember
4 years
that.
ago, and I called him Chris Do Nothing Carr. He's like a turtle who will not refuse to stick his neck out for anything.
If it's anything that's got a little hair on it, he's going to run away from it pretty quick. But so that is, like I said, I mean, and he's been running for 2 years. He's still in single digits in this governor's race. So, it is what it is with him.
Raffensperger, on the other hand,
Raffensperger has been pretty terrible to work with. I'll say that. I mean, I tried to go to him when I first got elected to see, how do we try to figure out how to get more people's confidence back in our election system. So I came in there with some legitimate questions about, the management systems in there, the Dominion voting machines and all this other stuff. And he stonewalled us on that. And he's got a real arrogant bunch that works for him. And they were just impossible to work with. And like I said, we went to them wanting to try to figure out how we could, because we're sitting here representing the people of the state, so we wanted to see if there was issues how we can correct them and all that kind of stuff. And they just stonewalled us. And so, and he's, you've been around him before. He's got the personality of a rock, I mean, he just sits there and he's not entertaining to be around or talk to or anything like that. So,
the thing I don't understand is why we still have the QR codes. When I campaigned, I went all over the state, and Dominion and the QR codes were uttered in the same breath. And I don't know anything that has undermined voter confidence in our electoral process than the pesky QR code, because, you cast your ballot. It's represented by what's on the QR code, but nobody can crack the QR code and look and see what it really has inside of it. And it makes me skeptical and wonder what's going on. Just continuing that thought for a second.
Yeah.
I found one person in 2022 when I was campaigning who said anything favorable about Raffensperger. I was on a forum in Ellijay, Georgia, where he literally could not finish his speech to a group of Republican grassroots people. And yet he claims that he won 51% against Jody Heiss, David Belle Isle, and Sheriff TJ without a runoff.
Right.
Can you get a fair election in this go around, Burt?
Well, we hope so. Look, obviously 2 years ago we passed to get rid of the QR codes. He still has not complied with that. And he's going to be out of compliance come July 1. So I'm fully expecting us have to go into a special session after this primary races are over with for us to, get to some sort of agreement where we'll be back in line with the law. But yeah, he's been impossible to work with. He's like I said, he's got a real arrogant bunch. That is his top staff that works around him. In fact, one of them is running for Secretary of State, Gabe Sterling, which is amazing to me that we've got a guy who's counting the votes, running for governor, and then his lieutenant is running for Secretary of State. So it does seem pretty strange. But look, that's the reason why we've just got to get out in masses, get out and early vote as much as we can. Obviously I ran in 22 as well. And, I won that race, and a lot of people didn't think I could win then, against who I was running, the three I was running against, but we won it without a runoff. So, I was very surprised about, the vote count that Secretary of State got in 22, but he seems to be, lagging as far as in the polls, as far in our race right now. It's a 2-man race, and that's really what I'm concentrating on right now. And when we run through the finish line on Tuesday, and which I think we're going to win on Tuesday, then I'll get with the Speaker and Governor Kemp, see exactly what we're going to do about having a special session and doing something about the QR codes.
Is there going to be any kind of a reapportionment effort in Georgia in that special session, like we've seen play out across the country now?
Oh, I think there definitely will be some conversations about it. Obviously, when you look at the maps right now, we could redraw the maps and pick up 2 more seats, possibly. I can't see us picking up any more seats than that. I'm talking about pick up 2 seats that would, be strong for a couple election cycles. You can redraw maps for right now, and but they might not be good for you in a couple years. So you can if you get too aggressive with it, you could put with the way Metro Atlanta is growing, you could put Republican districts in more harm's way than they are right now. So I definitely think there's an opportunity to draw the lines where you could potentially pick up 2 congressional seats, but we'll have to look at it because, like I said, I've traveled all over the state, and I know the states that are I know the counties that are ruby red, and I know the counties that might be red but are trending in a different direction right now. So I think you have to be mindful of that when you get ready to draw lines. But it's definitely going to be in the conversation if we do have a special session.
Well, Burt, you are you are the only reason that the Trump 19 was not the Trump 20, because you looked Fani Willis in the eyes and you beat her and you got her indictment against you removed. How is she still the district attorney of Fulton County, Georgia?
That's a great question. Look, we put in the prosecutor oversight committee, and I've been very disappointed in how it has really not done anything since we appointed them. I had a couple of appointments and speaker in the governor's office, and quite frankly, I have been unimpressed with what they've done. In fact, the reason why we had to call in Fani Willis as well as Stacey Abrams here just as recently yesterday to question them about some of their shenanigans that they've done on different fronts was, number one, because we have an attorney general who is pretty much useless. And then also, we've got this prosecutor oversight committee that we put together to go after DAs who are not doing their job properly. And they have done nothing since they've been established. So anyway, when I get elected governor, I promise you, we're gonna put some bulldogs on there to go after DAs who are not following the law and who are not doing their duties under the Constitution.
Well, there's ample reason to be concerned about Fani Willis's stewardship of her job. She and Nathan Wade went on extravagant trips around the country while she was paying him a very high wage to be a special prosecutor on a RICO case for which he had no experience or knowledge.
That was such a witch hunt. That was the biggest sham ever. I spent 2.5 years paying lawyer fees, fighting this lady, and there was nothing. Nobody broke any laws. That's been the biggest misinformation campaign ever. Nobody broke any laws. Nobody tried to harm anybody. People were asking questions, and they wanted those questions to be investigated and answered
to get a fair, honest election. You're not saying that Fani Willis broke no laws, though, are you?
I'm talking about the folks who were indicted.
The Trump 19.
Yeah, the Trump 19. Nobody broke any laws, and it's ridiculous that she wasted almost $20 million of taxpayer money on her charade. It was all self-promotion. It was all about trying to get on magazines and TV and go on vacation and all this other stuff.
Well, she was colluding with the Biden White House, including the January 6th Commission, which we now know have learned subsequently.
No question. And if we had an attorney general, that would do his job, then instead of running for governor for the last 2 years, you might have somebody who could you might have
somebody.
So
all I can say is I did my best to try and fix that.
yeah. Hey, look, John. Hey, John. I got to get out of here. I got to get up to Gainesville here in a second. So let's.
We got 1 minute left. While in that 1 minute, tell us about what separates you from Rick Jackson. I mean, I understand that he has given money not only to Jeff Duncan, but to Liz Cheney and other people. Stacey Abrams brought her name up. What in the world is going on? He claims to love Trump, but he never gave him a nickel until he got elected.
That's right. Look, I'm the only conservative in this race, quite frankly, John. I mean, look, when you look at Jackson, Razzensberger, and Carr, these guys are not conservatives. These guys are milquetoast. And you just look back to 24, 22, and 20, when I was out there fighting for election integrity, fighting for Republicans to win statewide in 22 and 24. These guys were nowhere to be found, including this Jackson guy, who you said it right. He's given to Stacey Abrams. He's given to Liz Cheney. He's given to John Ossoff. And he's also given to Jeff Duncan. He bankrolled Jeff Duncan. I wouldn't be surprised if Jeff Duncan's not still on his payroll, to tell you the truth. But he is not a conservative. He is not. He's not out there looking out for everyday Georgians. He's out there trying to look after a profit that he's getting off the state with these state contracts. And I tell you what, he's somebody that if he's a manipulator, he's a pathological liar. Nothing that comes out of his mouth is the truth. You can tell it with the campaign that he's run. They've attacked me literally on everything because they don't want to actually try to debate me on the issues themselves, because they know I have a very conservative, consistent track record.
They've attacked you from the shadows with this secret PAC that they've got millions and millions of dollars that they've used to attack you. I assume that's from Rick Jackson. Nobody really knows, but
no question. That's his style. That's what he did to David Schaefer back when he was running against Jeff Duncan. That's what he's done to other members who have disagreed with him in the past. That's what he does. He tries to hide in the shadows like the coward that he is, and to hide in the shadows and attack people with his money. And so anyways, but we're going to beat him because Georgians are starting to see through all this mess, and we're going to beat him on Tuesday. And I look forward to putting him in our rearview mirror.
Well, I wish you well. You said you were going to win on Tuesday. Does that mean win without a runoff?
That's what we're shooting for. I don't play for overtime. I like to get these things done in 4 quarters, Well,
I was pleased to attend your event yesterday, and I picked up a Burt Jones bumper sticker, and it is prominently displayed on the back of my car. So best wishes to you, and good luck on Tuesday, and we'll continue to follow the race. Thank you for coming on The Truth today.
All right, I appreciate it, John. Always good to see you. Y'all have a good one. Thank you.
Have a good day. Our studio sponsor is Bone Frog Coffee, and it's veteran-owned, founded by retired Navy SEAL Tim Cruikshank as a tribute to his fallen teammates in the Naval Special Warfare community. We're going to get Tim to come on The Truth in the very near future and talk to us about his time in the Navy Special Forces and Bone Frog Coffee, where each bag tells a story and gives a peek behind the curtain of special ops. If you don't already know, the Bone Frog is a sacred symbol in the SEAL teams that represents those who give their lives in combat and is a reminder of the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom and the American way of life. Every bag, premium, small batch roasted from top shelf Arabica beans, smooth, low acid, no robusta junk. Think bold blends like Frogman Dark Roast or the classic Bone Frog Medium. Tastes like freedom in a cup. And here's the real deal. A chunk of every sale goes right to helping SEAL vets and Gold Star families, aiming for $500,000 donated. Coffee with a cause? You bet. That's not a slogan. It's brotherhood brewed daily. Head to bonefrogcoffee.com, snag some K-Cups, whole bean, or merchandise. Use the promo code TRUTH. Start your day just like I do. Fuel up, stay sharp, and remember, service before self. Support our veterans and thank Bone Frog for sponsoring our studio. Check them out now at bonefrogcoffee.com. Last week, I had the pleasure of appearing on Church and State with Caleb Collier. we had such a good conversation, I decided to invite Caleb to come on The Truth. Caleb Collier, welcome to The Truth.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I love the name of your show. That's what we're all about, right? Is pursuing truth.
Totally. You know, I was watching earlier this week a Senate Oversight Committee investigating the COVID outbreak, and they were interviewing a whistleblower. Ron Johnson, who is a member of that committee, asked the whistleblower, and the whistleblower, by the way, worked for the CIA. And he has had a lot of blowback as a result of his decision to speak out. Ron Johnson said, "Who runs the deep state?" And his response was, "I don't know." And I've been asking the identical same question for about 4 years now. Do you have an inkling?
Yeah, that's a big question. There are names that we know that we're suspicious of, and you know the deep state can go by many different names: the Bilderberg Group, the World Economic Forum, those that run around naked at Bohemian Grove. But will we ever know truly who's at the top? Probably not until the Antichrist emerges on scene.
Well, my suspicion is that the CIA is at the epicenter of the deep state. I think that most of the atrocities that have happened in our country during my lifetime have the fingerprints of the CIA and the FBI all over them. I'm personally sick of it. I think that it is a cancer inside of our federal government that has to be excised. And I don't mean the entire CIA, just the bad part of it. Find the people inside the CIA that, you know, I know many, many smart people. And I tend to get along really well with smart people. And but then there is a class, there's a number of smart people, many of them who went to Harvard, who truly do think that they are some kind of an elite group that know the answers to questions better than anyone else. And I just call BS on that, because I've seen a lot of their answers, which I vehemently disagree with. So the CIA employs a lot of real eggheads. A lot of Ivy Leaguers find their way into the CIA. I don't know what's going on. One possibility that I consider is that there are a group of people inside the CIA and the FBI and the NSA that think they're smarter than everybody else and that they should just make decisions on how to run our country. To hell with the Constitution and the rule of law. And as Ron Johnson pointed out in that hearing, they just flick the Congress off. When they subpoena documents and require information be sent to them, they just don't respond. How arrogant, how rude, how destructive to our country in the long term could they be? I think it is time to do more than convene a church committee. I think it is time to reform the alphabet agencies inside our government and do it with a pretty broad brush. Your thoughts?
I would absolutely agree with that. I am a libertarian of the minarchist vein, not monarchist, minarchist. Many people don't understand that, but it's a very minimal type of government. And, you know, John Adams' famous words, a lot of people like to quote these, that our Constitution was made for a moral and religious people and is wholly inadequate to any other. But we have to flip that on to the government as well. When we look at the Founding Fathers, they were an elite class. There's no doubt about that. But they were a moral and religious people. And so they wrote a republic for us. And then Benjamin Franklin's famous words, if we can keep it. I would argue that most of the people that are currently leading this country are not moral and they're not religious. And so our leaders are a massive problem. I think a great start is to go after pretty much every single one of these alphabet agencies. As a libertarian, I believe that the vast majority of government functions can actually be performed in a better way through either the church or individuals or charities, those types of things. I'm all for it drives my wife nuts, but I hate public parks. I would like to go to a park in a neighborhood where I have to spend $2 to get into the park or $5 to get into the park. I think it would actually run a whole lot more efficiently than what we currently have with our government systems.
Well, that's an interesting idea. In Atlanta, in a federal park owned by the United States Park Service, you don't have to pay to get in, you just have to pay to park. And they're ruthless about ticketing you if you don't pay to park in the public park. That's always seemed to be a little anomalous to me. But the parks would probably be cleaner. People would probably take better care of them if they had to pay 50 cents to get in. So it's an idea worth considering. I just hate to have to pay more money to the government to get anything, especially to use land that we already own. But we digress. I mean, I think that there is possibly the emergence of a recognition in this country about the deep state and the bad things that the government has done. I've been calling for several years now that we need a Day of Atonement where all the secrets are just released. I've also called, and I know this is a little bit of a fantasy, but I would support an initiative where we grant amnesty to all members of Congress who will come into a confession booth, and we'll get apolitical priest and clergy to man those confession booths, and you get a 1-month window to confess all of your sins, particularly as relate to bribes that you may have taken, blackmail to which you may have succumbed. We will keep your secret secret, and we will forgive you. But then we use that information to go after the people that have done the blackmailing and the bribery. That will never happen. But don't you think that if we were able to get to a clean baseline of morality, that we could have a good government?
I mean, that's a really interesting idea. I got to tell you. Do you think a month is a long enough time? I mean, I'm thinking of some of these politicians. It might take years to get everything off of their chests with all the nefarious activities that they've been engaged in. So I'm not sure if that month would be enough, but I like the idea because, you know, the politicians aren't the problem. It's the root issue. It's the people, like you said, that are engaging in the blackmail. It's the Jeffrey Epsteins, which I've been saying on my show for a very long time. There are hundreds of Jeffrey Epsteins. We know about one. We know about 2 locations, a ranch in New Mexico and an island in the Caribbean. But there are thousands of locations where this kind of stuff is going on. And if our government is being led by people who are satanic pedophile cannibals, I think the American people need to know that.
How do we get the word out? First of all, how do we learn with certainty who those people are? Then we can figure out how to out them.
Yeah, I mean, great question. I mean, we have the Epstein lists, you know. I mean, we've known about it for a long time. Biden had it. Biden wouldn't release it. Trump has it now. He won't release it. And I'm not beholden to political parties. I don't care. I will go after the Democrats just as much as I will go after the Republicans. We need to hold our leaders accountable to this. And I think releasing the Epstein files is something that the vast majority of Americans can get behind. You know, we had Pam Bondi over there saying it's on my desk. And then she's saying, oh, wait, I never said it was on my desk. When she's quizzed about it, she's like, but the Dow is at 50,000. I'm like, I don't care about the Dow right now. I want to know about children who were molested, raped, murdered. That's way more important to me than the economy of the United States. I want to know. I don't care if Trump's on the list. I want to know it. And if he is, then he should be held accountable for it. Same with a Democrat or any Republican. We need to completely just remove any of these, probably the most evil people I can imagine. We need to remove them from their seats of power, and then maybe we can correct the United States on the path that it's currently on.
You make a compelling argument. I've taken the position that I don't really care so much about who's on the list. I do and I don't. I do from the standpoint of people who are in power. I don't for people who are not in power. The danger is that you sweep people into this net who engaged in no nefarious activity with Jeffrey Epstein, and you run the potential of ruining their lives, their careers, their families. And I think that's a risk that's just more than I'm willing to accept at this point in time, unless we could figure out a way that it could be done to separate those people out of the list. But I am obsessed with finding out who sponsored it. I don't believe for a minute that Jeffrey Epstein did this on his own and that he was able to engage in these illegal, unlawful, amoral activities without the cover of our government. And I'm sure that on some pathetic level, they rationalized what they did, believing that they were somehow going to help our government. But really what they were doing is rationalizing their own unlawful, amoral activity to justify a result. And the result was that they could control these people with power and demand that they do things, vote certain ways, and conduct themselves like they were told to do, rather than allow them to base their conduct on their conscience, their God, and their voters, their constituents.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's all about leverage. That's what Jeffrey Epstein was about. And all evidence that I've seen seems to point to exactly what you were saying, the CIA and also the Mossad. It appears that Jeffrey Epstein was working for both agencies. And if you think I'm being unfair to the United States or to the nation of Israel, newsflash, every country is doing this. Every country has individuals like Epstein that want leverage. And this is how it works. For the longest time politically, if they could catch a congressman, for example, in an affair, just a simple, I guess, traditional affair, for lack of a better word, just a man and a woman.
We're
I know.
Minimizing, trivializing an affair, cheating on your wife. Oh, well, it's just
I know,
an affair.
But in the modern sense,
because that pales by comparison to what we believe happened at Epstein Island and in his domiciles in New York, New Mexico, the Caribbean.
Absolutely. And so, that was how they controlled people. If they could have you on camera or pictures of you engaging in an affair on your wife, right? But then that became to where our morality slipped as a country, and then it became homosexuality. So now if they could find a congressman who was into men, boom, now they're controllable. But as morality continued to slide, homosexuality got where it was completely accepted. And now we're at a point in this country where it's kids. Pedophilia is still, I want to say, universally looked down upon. Now they're trying to combat that. The sick leftists with a horrible agenda are trying to combat that. They're trying to legalize it in California, for example. But right now, that is how they control people. It's leverage. And so if they can have you on video raping a little kid, they own you. They control you. You will vote. You will do whatever they say. Hopefully our country doesn't come to a point where pedophilia is accepted, but if it does, they'll probably move on to bestiality, as gross as that sounds. But that's the progression of control.
I would prefer, not personally, I would prefer if the morality is between pedophilia and bestiality, I would say go have sex with animals. But to me, children are a red line. I mean, I think that it should be, it would be fine with me if it were a capital offense, that if you rape or do something immoral towards a child, I think you should be hung in the town square. I have no reservations about that whatsoever. And, I'm not sure. I go back and forth in my own mind on whether I'm a libertarian or whether I'm a strict constructionist and want to follow the laws of God. I don't waffle on following the laws of God, but then again, I do a little bit when it comes to being a libertarian. I mean, I for a long time, I thought that was really cool, that live and let live. You decide your own morality, I'll decide mine. If you want to follow Christ's teachings, great. as I want to, that I aspire to do that. I'm a human being and we're all sinners. I'm not perfect, except, of course, in my wife's eyes. But we strive to be good people. But then a friend of mine said, that's such a cop-out. You're letting people that go against God's word off the hook on the basis of this libertarian notion. So I'm not sure where can you be strictly Old Testament in some context and libertarian in others? I mean,
absolutely.
To me, weed is a place where, for a long time, I just said, let people make their own decisions. I mean, is it where in the Netherlands that they're pretty libertarian, or they were for a long time? Drugs were readily available. There was not enforcement, but I think that social experiment proved to be very flawed. And they got tired of running the methadone clinics and caring for people who became wards of the state because they abused drugs and got addicted. And then they become the state's problems, not to mention, their lives were ruined. So I'm questioning the libertarian viewpoint. It can't be a one size fits all, I don't think.
No, and I agree with you. And this is the wonderful thing about anyone within the the right leanings politically is that we can engage in good conversations like this. I would say that I am a Christian libertarian, and Christ comes first. The fundamental point to understand with libertarianism is that they abide by the non-aggression principles. And when you look at that and examine what our founding fathers were talking about with the law of nature and of nature's God, you can see that the non-aggression principles really align with that. So don't murder, don't steal, right? These are aggressive acts against another individual. And every libertarian, and there is a vast spectrum of libertarianism, would agree with those principles. Now, some of them, they get a little weird about abortion. And I would argue that killing a infant in the womb is an act of aggression. And so as a Christian, I'm going to be fundamentally opposed to the act of abortion, but some libertarians think that one's okay. When we look at something like what you were talking about with the drug policies, I would always point to the Prohibition era, where our government and all of its benevolence decided that, hey, Americans, you can no longer consume alcohol. And what did they do? Like how much of a fiasco was that? Clearly it didn't work. And in fact, our government started poisoning alcohol that they were getting from the bootleggers and letting it be distributed. So our own government was killing its citizens by poisoning alcohol. Look, the drug problem is always going to be a problem. It's like what Jesus said with the poor. The poor will always be among you. There will always be people, no matter what restrictions you apply, no matter what regulations, no matter how illegal you make it, there's going to be people that are interested in using drugs. The solution, in my opinion, is to remove the safety nets. If an individual is going to engage in drug use, well, they shouldn't be on the public dole. They shouldn't be able to get a Medicare or Social Security. Personally, I think those should all go away anyway and be privatized. But if you remove that to where somebody, if they want to do drugs all day long, well, good luck finding food unless you go to a charity, a private charity. Maybe they'll give you some food. But it causes people to where they have to work in order to fulfill their addiction. And at that point, I firmly believe it would really reduce the amount of drugs. Not to mention the fact that drugs are all illegal in this country. Some of them actually, like marijuana, can have some health benefits, but we've created a black market, and you could argue that it's created the rise of these cartel lords.
Well, I remember going to Santa Barbara, California, to do a business meeting a number of years ago, and that was before pot was legal. But Santa Barbara seemed to be a refuge for young kids that wanted to go smoke pot. And I was just shocked by the number of really attractive young 18, 20, 22-year-olds that were homeless and living on the streets. But the presence of marijuana in the air was everywhere. And I guess they grew it up in the hills. I've got very mixed feelings about legalizing pot. That's where that's a prime example of the internal debate that I have. As a libertarian, I would say, yeah, sure, you want to smoke pot, smoke pot. But we know that it destroys motivation, it creates apathy, and it's not a good long-term strategy. Then, where do you draw the line? I mean, people who are suffering from a disease or an illness and are in constant pain and can find relief from pot, I think we would be inhumane if we did not allow them to have it. So I just don't know. I'm a little. I think we're conducting the experiment right now by legalizing pot in so many places. I don't know that it's a good long-term strategy for our young people.
And I think anybody that's using drugs should probably take a long, hard look in the mirror. I think right now with the experiment that's being run in places like Washington State, where I'm at, Oregon, California, Colorado, there's numerous states that have legalized it, is it's not a fair experiment because we still currently have all of these government entitlement programs, which are allowing people to literally waste away while still getting government money to feed their habit.
Yeah, there was a book written in the 40s, Think and Grow Rich, maybe? I think that was it. And in the book, the author made the point that we weaken the weakest among us because we prop them up. And that's the argument that you're making, which I absolutely agree with. And as a father of 3 boys, I've thought about it for the last 45 years of how do you raise your children and how much do you give them and under what circumstances. It's a tough choice, but I kind of err on the side of let them earn it.
I would agree. What we've seen, you talk about like generational wealth. If you actually examine maybe the grandfather, the patriarch, who built this company and through blood, sweat, and tears was able to make it successful, by the time it gets to the grandkid, most of them, their money is all gone because these kids, they haven't appreciated what they've given. And honestly, I think that's a great example of how we live as Americans. Our forefathers fought for this republic, for this beautiful experiment in liberty and freedom. And the vast majority of Americans nowadays, we don't appreciate it. We don't care about it. We're apathetic towards what this country could be, and we're allowing it to literally be utterly destroyed right in front of our eyes with no thought of what our kids or our grandkids are going to live under. That keeps me up at night. I got to tell you, John, I'm worried about the condition of the United States and where we go from here.
Well, I share your concern, and especially with the midterms just around the corner, if the American people don't show up at the polls, we have a real risk. Republicans have a real risk of losing the Congress, and the Trump agenda will be blocked for the next 2 years. So I think it is a major concern. You know, that Senate hearing that I spoke about at the beginning of the show, do you know how many Democrats attended?
Oh, I did. Wasn't it like 0 or something like that?
It was like 0. It wasn't like 0. It was 0. So why would Democrats want to enable somebody like Anthony Fauci and cover up for what they did? I mean, maybe the deep state is enabled by the Democrats.
I think the deep state is enabled by what I would say is the uniparty. I heard a great political joke the other day, John. I actually wrote into my will that when I die, I want 6 Republicans, congressmen, to be my pallbearers. That way they can let me down one more time. And that's the state of the Republican Party right now, is that they give us a lot of promises, and we were promised a lot of things, and I will be fair, some things have occurred. But traditionally, when we're looking at especially recent history, the Republican Party really hasn't done much for us. And I think, in what we were talking about earlier with the deep state, with the CIA, Mossad agents, there's a lot of foreign agents that are involved in this country. AIPAC, I mean, most of the Congress people are getting money, both Democrat and Republican, from AIPAC. They are controlled. And it's like... libertarians will say that the two wings of the same bird. They're all moving us towards an agenda of global control. I mean, when we examine what's currently being discussed in this country, the Real ID Act, where it got an organic phone call, right?
Well, I thought it was Trump, but it's not. Yeah, I guess he's busy.
Well, we're currently experiencing a Real ID, which will be tied to our medical records, our health records, our banking. And if you don't have a Real ID, you will no longer be allowed to travel. It'll be directly tied to how you work. Now, couple with that, with what they were talking about during 2020, during the COVID pandemic, and vaccine passports. They were saying if anybody didn't get vaccinated, that'd be me. I didn't take that stupid vaccine.
Well, you were smart.
I wouldn't have been allowed to work, right? I wouldn't have been allowed to travel. That is massively tyrannical, and it's coming to us from the Republicans. This is a massive problem that we need to be talking about in this country. That I don't care. I don't have a team. It's like a sports team. We've been divided through tribalism, where we look, oh, my neighbor's a Democrat, I automatically hate them. It's the same thing that they've done with race, with sex, with gender. They're all trying to divide us. And the vast majority of Americans that I talk to, we mostly want the same thing. We want to be left alone. We want to be able to raise our families. We want a home. We don't want gas to be through the roof so we can go take a family vacation. That's what's important to Americans. And neither party is actually taking us the right direction.
How do we get the genie back in the bottle? What's your solution to these very real problems that I certainly am in violent agreement with you on?
Absolutely. I used to work for the John Birch Society. Some of the gray hairs remember the John Birch Society. Great organization. And one of the things that they said, it was one of their taglines, was the Constitution is the solution. And so we have to go back. If we truly want to make America great, as Donald Trump promised, it is two things. Number one, we have to go back to being a religious people. And look, the country was built on the idea that there was religious freedom, okay? But primarily that was within really the Protestant denominations. You could be a Methodist, you could be a Quaker, you could be a Presbyterian in this country. Did we allow for Catholics and Jews? Absolutely. But there is some fundamental differences between certain religions and our Constitution. Sharia law takes precedence to a Muslim over our Constitution. That's a problem that we have to deal with in this country if we're going to open the borders to these people. Should there be legal immigration? Absolutely. But we got to go back to what the Constitution says. And we have all these activist judges. The judicial branch is completely ruined, in my opinion. Most people think that judges serve for life. That's not the case. Supreme Court justices don't serve for life. They serve in times of good behavior. That's what the Constitution says. So if we get some yahoo that's a Supreme Court justice that is looking at the Constitution as a living, breathing document, guess what the people can do? We can impeach them. Maybe we should start exercising that. That might be a way to start fixing some of these things at least.
Well, I think those are very good strategies, and I'm, again, in very much in agreement with you. I always felt like the judiciary is where you could find refuge and get justice, but it seems like that is likewise a fallacy and a fantasy today. Dustin Hoffman said in a movie I saw that you can get they dispense justice at the courthouse, and sometimes you can even find it there.
As a sad statement, but it's absolutely accurate. So revamping the judicial system, giving the legislative branch the proper authority that it has according to our Constitution. I mean, we want to talk about foreign wars, right? I think most Americans are pretty tired of foreign wars. We've been at war. I mean, we've been at war since 2001 as a country with one nation or another. And Donald Trump said that he was going to put an end to that, and here we are. We've gone into Venezuela. We kidnapped a president of a sovereign country. Now Donald Trump's talking about Venezuela being the 51st state. I think he's trolling there personally. I don't think that's actually a plan or an agenda. But we're in Iran. People are saying it's just a conflict. It's a war, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, it's a war. If you're bombing another country, that is an act of war. If somebody was bombing the United States, we would view it as an act of war. But if we actually started going back to the legislative branch and their authority, well, you cannot declare war without Congress. That's one of their authorities. And so I don't care who's in power. I don't care if it's Biden. I don't care if it's Obama, Trump, Bush. If you want to go to war against another country, well, you better get the approval of Congress, who are supposed to represent we the people. Another solution that I would point to is abolishing the 17th Amendment. The 17th Amendment is one of the worst amendments to our Constitution that we have ever had. If we went back to senators actually representing the states instead of the people, I think we would be in a much better situation.
That's an interesting concept. Jacob Collier, we've certainly identified a lot of problems here today. We'll keep working on them. Tell us about church and state and what you're about. Does it go beyond the podcast?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we're all over the place. We're part of the National Religious Broadcasters Television Network, which broadcasts into 39 million homes across America. Part of the Prepper Broadcasting Network, newscasters. We're pretty much at every social media. You can't find us on YouTube. I got banned because I wouldn't shut up about the vaccine, so they took me off the air. But Church and State, we've been at this for nearly a decade. I have a very interesting history. I'm a former city councilman. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, former EMT. I was actually born into a cult, which is another side story that's kind of interesting. I've worked for TPUSA Faith. I've worked for the John Birch Society. Currently work for a company called Mark37.com, which is we sell ghost phones, so phones that don't spy on you, which is a phenomenal thing. But if you want to check me out, churchandstate.media is the website. Right when you go on the website, you're going to get hit with a really annoying pop-up. But if you give us your name, address, and phone number, you'll get our newsletter. And also, I personally call every single person who fills that out. So if you want to have a conversation with me, agree, disagree, I will call every one of you who fills this out.
Thank you, Caleb. It's been a pleasure, and I appreciate your coming on The Truth today, and I hope this is just the first of many conversations that we will have. Loved having you on. Thanks.
Absolutely.